And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a pretty big game, Orléans Stories. Now, I really loved Orléans and the sequel, Altiplano, which I didn't like quite as much as Orléans, but it's a really good game too. And so, Orléans Stories was number 4 on my anticipated games from Essen 2019 last year. Very excited about it. I was a little concerned about the fact that I had gone through it like, oh, it's a story, a campaign style game. Not sure that I'm really that enthralled with it. Well, it's a big game, and I figured I'm going to wait till I have time to play it. Thus, I do now. I had heard some rumblings, not too many, some rumblings that some people were not fans of the game, but you know, it's based on Orléans, so I was kind of excited. I was really surprised, therefore, when I found out that it's not really a story-driven game per se. Orléans is a game that actually has the story in one game. It's not a thing where you're playing game. No, just one big game. There's actually 2 separate games in here. I mean, they play the same way. One short, one is longer. So I'm going to show you the longer one because that's the one that they kind of tout, I think, as the main game itself. The other one's the second one in the book. So this, if you have never played Orléans before, don't worry. I'll show you how this is played. And if you have played Orléans before, this is fairly different in many, many respects. Let me show you. There's a lot going on in the game, so I'm not going to be able to go over everything, but hopefully this will give you an idea of how the game works. Now, there are 2 different games included in the box. They kind of play out the same way. The first one, which is called the First Kingdom, each player is going to get a booklet here. And to go through this game, you're going to be in different eras. There is a board over here where you'll keep track of which era you're in. But, I mean, you also can keep track simply by being on those pages in the book. So, for example, in Era 1, it tells you what you start with. It tells you some of the rules that you have for this round. And then it tells you how to go to the next round. It also tells you all the different descriptions of the different buildings you can build in this round. And then each era is the same way. Some eras have a smaller page. That does not mean the era is necessarily shorter. It just means there's fewer changes from the previous round. Occasionally, an era might make you put something down on the board and you cannot take that action. So players are going to be doing this. Players will also have a sheet of paper here. To win the game, you're going to have to basically check off all of these things. You have to have built these things. You are building these things by essentially sending these resources off to these builders, I guess. And so you're sending people off. And as you send them off, you'll check them off here. And then once they're all checked off, you'll check off each of these. You also need to gain 20 citizens over the game. There's different ways to get that. And you check this one off. And then at the end, you simply need to turn in a total value of 30 between coins and the value of goods that you have. At that point, you'll win the game. The first person to do that. Now, each of the games is going to revolve around this board. And so on a player's turn, you're going to draw a certain number of these people from the bag. So, for example, in the first era, you'll pull 7 from the bag, and then you'll put them in front of you. Now, you only start here with these 6, but you might get more as time goes by. You're then going to simultaneously, all the players are going to decide where to put these people. And so maybe I'll put them here like this, and here like this. I could even, here you can see different people can go there. I can even put him here and wait for a future turn and put the other person there to take that action. Then, starting with the person who has the first player action, each player is going to take an action. So some of the actions are pretty simple. When you do the cottage or the mill action, you're going to take, whenever you do an action, you take all these people and throw them back in your bag. This will give you another fisherman, or another brown, or another white, or another black person that is going to come from the general supply. So there's a general supply here that has goods and different people in it. You'll notice that there's a lot of folks that are not in it. There are different spots, including the monks, that don't have anything, and some of the goods. Well, as the game progresses, players are going to be going through various eras. And in each of the eras, there's a card for each of these eras, and it will read you a story. And then, so let's say as soon as somebody goes to era 2, you'll notice that depending on the number of players, you'll add this many things to the supply. So sometimes it's resources, and sometimes it's people will get added to the supply. And so players are just going to be following these as the game goes by, adding the different things to the supply. And that is going to make this supply ebb and flow. If it's not in the supply, you can't get it. A random map is going to be placed on the board, and players are going to have their different people on various cities as the game goes by. And one of your actions will be to expand into areas that are next to you. And you can even, if you get next to somebody else, take a territory from them. Although as the game goes by, you'll also be able to build these to stop somebody. You'll be able to convert these to cities if you want to. Or take the resources that match the different areas on the board and get those. And then you can buy and sell those materials in the market for money. Sometimes you need very specific materials. Sometimes you need food. It all depends. Also, there's a track here. This is not a victory point track. This is fame points. But as you pass various things on here, you're going to get the rewards. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's a citizen that you'll get. Sometimes you get to pull someone from the bag. And you'll get fame points in different ways. Sometimes there are buildings that let you do it. Sometimes when you build a new town on the board, you will get to do it also. So this action here allows you to expand your territory, convert to a village where you need to spend a wood, and to get the resources from the areas you control under terrain. You also can get money, go buy and sell at the market, and you can go to the building yard where you'll go through the number of tiles, and there's different tiles available for different eras of the game, and be able to buy a new thing. So maybe I'll take this grove, and every time I go there, I get a wood. So I have that new building that I can place somebody in. And in fact, there's also buildings that will come to a player automatically as the game progresses. So the university, which gives you a gray person, and then the monastery, which gives you the monks, which are wilds. And here I can build fortresses and churches and castles and get knights. And the laboratories, where I can get these cogs, the technology, which essentially you'll be able to put into a spot, which will permanently mean it stays in that spot. But you're also going to be able to put people in these portals and or goods. And when you do that, you're going to be able to send them off to different charitable places over here. Now, when you do that, you're going to get the reward in a place. Sometimes it's fame points, sometimes it's money. And this one here, you can trade one of your goods for someone else's. And when you accomplish these, when they're all completely filled, the person who puts the last one in gets a citizen, and then it's flipped over. And then when it's filled up again, it's removed from the game. And some of them, for example, like this food depot and medicine, will also provide a special benefit as listed by the cards that come with them. So you want to send those off. You can also send these off to check off different things on your sheet that you have. Now, sending them off, though, removes them from the game, essentially. So you're going to have to try to come to the best terms of when to do that. Players are also keeping track of the number of territories, the number of towns, and the number of churches they have. As you move up on these, 5 territories up to 10, and the towns and churches, you will also be getting more citizens, which, as you remember, is one of the ways to win the game. So that's essentially it. There is another game you can play, The King's Favor. This is a shorter one that has fewer eras in it, and so the stuff kind of progresses a little bit faster. Also has some bonuses on the fame track that are going to change, and then at the end you'll be scoring victory points based on the different things that you've collected and done on the board, and it comes with a different set of cards also. While the component quality is good, storing this thing is a monster. There's a lot of pieces. It has this nice insert that comes with the game, and you can store all the different pieces in here. And then stacking them in these areas here is a little bit of a pain in the neck. This I felt was almost unnecessary, this giant board here to keep track of, what area you're in. It gives you some of the details, but at a distance, I can't tell what any of that stuff does. It tells you how many you draw from the bag, how you get points for building towns, and what you need. There's a lot of information on this board, but it's really not that easy to read. This stuff is fine. Where I'm going to complain a lot is the rule book. The rule book for this game is hands down really badly done. It's this really big rule book here, which tells you all the components. Great, I like that. Then gives you this whole, here's how the bag building works. Then here's the setup for the game. And then here's some of the basic actions you can take. And then here's how eras work, changing from one era to the other, and so on and so forth. And then here's how the first kingdom works. And then, so you got to jump from the first kingdom back to the other one, and then look at the other one, and they made them the same color, which doesn't help at all. And then you're looking in this book and in this book, and there's rules that are missed. For example, in one era, you need to go to the other era, you need to pay a certain amount of food. Well, what is food? You say, well, that's obvious. You know, fish is food. Wood is not food. Great. Is grain food? Is wine food? I don't know, and it's not clear. And the rules themselves are not clear, and really I feel like they're under the assumption you've already played Orléans. That's how it feels throughout all the rules, that they kind of like, yeah, you got this. No, I don't got this necessarily. So the rules are problematic. Again, there's also a gazillion pieces, but the game doesn't feel like it's a gazillion pieces. It feels like there's a lot to set up and sort out and things, but it doesn't feel like at the end of the day that it's worth having all these pieces. But that being aside, let's go to final thoughts. Whew, where to begin here? There's a lot to unpack in this. This is a big, grandiose game. So we'll start with the bigness of it. I don't mind big games. I like big games. But there's one thing that this game is a filthy liar on, and that is the time. So on the side of the box here, it says 60 to 180 minutes. I can't imagine, even with 2 players, even playing the shortened game, that it's 60 minutes. That is balderdash. With multiple players and the first game, I can't imagine it coming under 180 minutes. This game could take 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. It is that long. Okay, so it's long. Therefore, a long, big game needs to be epic, and Orléans Stories is not epic. You know what Orléans Stories feels like? It feels like they deconstructed Orléans, took out some of the very fun parts like traveling around the map and or trying to focus on one strategy per se. They took those out of the game and they looked around for another game's DNA. And they were like, what game should we mix? Phase 10. And as you all know, my opinion's on Phase 10, but that's what this game feels like. Ooh, I'm in Era 6. I'm still in Era 4. I'm trying to catch up. It just, you want to advance in eras because you have more things that you can often do in these eras, but it's this jumping from era to era, and therein lies the problem with the game. The number one problem with this game is it's really long, and yet you do the same thing over and 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 over. And I'm not kidding, that is what you do. You do the same actions. Now, as time goes by, you open up more and more actions. Like I said, it's like they took Orléans and said, we're going to make it so that you can only do part of the game at the beginning, and then at the end you can do all the stuff, except you can't. This game has some extremely huge flaws, one of them being in the rule book. Another one is there's the possibility for you to be eliminated from the game. Not actually eliminated, but the resource that you might need to progress and win might be gone. Therefore, you cannot win. Now, I'm sure the designer might say, hey, you can look forward in the book and know you need it. Make sure you buy it. Are you kidding me? To play a game that's 3 to 4 hours and realize a good chunk through 2.5 hours, oh, I can't win, is not... Who thinks that's fun? Maybe the person who beat you. There's also some take that stuff, and they put in the rule book, oh, but you can share the land. Sure, but if one person decides they don't want to share, so be it. And the whole resources, it's really easy to just run the market out of resources. Hey, I'll just take as many resources as I can get. But the biggest problem with the game, like I said, that fact that you do things over and over again is it takes the strategy out. It literally tells you, this is what you need to do to go to the next era. Get this stuff. You know what I'll do? I'll get this stuff. Now do this. Okay, I'll do that. But to do that, I need to do this and this and this and this. And you know that. And this and this and this. And it just feels really, really mind-numbingly repetitive. To the point where someone has asked me this question a while ago. has ever a game made you appreciate another game more, this has. Because I think the closest game that I could sense in how this game is put together is a game that I gave a 6 to back in the day called The Colonists from Lookout Games / Mayfair Games. And The Colonists is a game that, again, I keep going back to and wanting to play again because it was a fairly long game. But in The Colonist, it felt more exciting and more groundbreaking, and the number of branches of passive strategy were varied. They're not in this game. Yes, I could choose to build this thing before this one, but it doesn't do me any good. That sheet of paper that you have where you're crossing things off and sending them to doesn't give you any bonuses. So you just do them in whatever order. And as you do them, you get rid of those people out of your area, which means you then need to spend actions getting them back so you can have people to do things with. And again, it's this churn. And churning in a game, grinding in a game is not necessarily ever fun, but in a game that's this long, that's problematic. Now, the second game in here, there's the First Kingdom, and then the other one is called The King's Favor. That's a little shorter and a little better, and in fact I would refuse to play the First Kingdom, but the First Kingdom has some interesting things that this one does not. I don't know. The game Orléans is amazing. And I played this with some people who did not play Orléans, and I kept saying, okay, we're going to play Orléans later. I need you guys to not hate Orléans based on this game. Because this is, it's Orléans in that you pull the figures from the bag and get resources, and everything else is really different. Some of the actions are the same, but in Orléans, it just felt so intriguing. There was a race to do things. Here, it's kind of a race to go to the next era, but I don't know. I just found the whole experience to be unfun. And then they have these cards here. Oh, read these cards. There's lots of story on them. Yeah, I guess the same story every game. I was like, blah, 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 blah. All right, add 10 more wood to the board. And it is, okay, I mean, I get that you go to a new era. Ooh, I can build some more buildings now. I can do something different. And then you find yourself doing the same stuff. So, just problematic all around. I cannot recommend this one. I really can't think of many people who would enjoy it. I cannot say if you liked Orléans, you'll like this. In fact, I think the opposite is true. If you like Orléans or Altiplano, both of them are much more interesting games, and they offer very diverse paths to victory. Orléans Stories does not. This is way longer than those. If you thought Orléans or Altiplano were taking a little bit long, especially with analysis paralysis people, you're not going to want to do this. And there's just pieces all over the place. It's a big, sprawling game. It doesn't feel like it should be big and sprawling. These books are okay, and I mean, I'll give them props. The fact that everyone has a book that explains what all the buildings does, that's neat. But then there's lots of other things like all this story stuff, which again means nothing to people. And then there's questions that aren't answered by the rule books. The rule book isn't clear. This is a mess, a hot mess, Orléans Story. And it's unfortunate because DLP has really been on a roll lately. But it's a misstep. I'm sure the next one will be fantastic. But for now, I cannot recommend this game really to anybody. Dice Tower Judgment, extremely disappointing.